Hi. This morning, the 6th of September 2020 is not very pleasant. It is overcast, drizzling, and really grey outside. And unfortunately, our people who are in the field of atmospheric sciences or meteorological sciences have not, I think, come out with sort of an explanation about what was it like during the last 50 years on September 6th. Was it sunny and grey mixed, or with a blue sky and white clouds, or heavily downpouring, or mildly drizzling? Unfortunately, our science in India will not open its mind unless it is prodded by some government official or a minister to speak. Our civil servants, especially in the so-called Indian civil service, even the very senior officials, are probably detached from the realities of the country and the average countrymen who go through the trials and tribulations in everyday life. In other words, there is not much of a difference between a very senior civil administrator and a politician, because they have a hand-in-glove relationship. And I think, that is what I think, the civil servants report to the political administrator or a minister only those things that are pleasing to the minister in the first place, and also with an eye on the following election and what shall be done or not done to garner the large chunk of citizens, average citizens' votes. Well, this has affected the domain of science also, or those science practitioners attached to the various, highly quote-unquote reputed research laboratories in the country. If I look, I've been in this profession as a teacher in a university and trained abroad, and I think when I look back, the contributions beyond, the teaching hours and class work, our esteemed faculty in whether it be a IIT or an ordinary college had not paid any attention to to broaden the horizons of knowledge in the chosen specialty. Definitely, we have published hundreds of papers, our science practitioners, as I call them. But unfortunately, not even 1% of those publications had come up with a newer idea. In other words, what we do is, in our laboratories and in research and the PhD research, what we do is, most of the time, what is called a kind of a reinventing the wheel. So and so in so and so paper has discussed something, and we have found a similar thing in our situation. There is a study. And there is not even a single study in our laboratories in this field of science and technology where not even a single analytical equipment was created or developed by anyone, any one person. Unfortunately, this has resulted in the early days of independence, that is 50 or 40 years ago, to a situation in the laboratories when we had no money to buy expensive equipments, whatever be the equipment. For example, I know of an instance when an atomic absorption spectrophotometer created by ECIL. And of course, ECIL had only put together all the components to make the machine, which was sold for 3 lakhs or 3.5 lakhs. What has happened is this particular equipment even today sits catching dust in a certain department in our campus in the University of Kerala. And very same department the following year went out for buying a Perkin-Elmer or a GBC atomic absorption spectrophotometer, which is actually what is called a workhorse in the field of research. And I don't think most people ever worry about who invented the atomic absorption spectrophotometer or who had invented the scanning electron microscope. These were all, for example, AAS, I think, was an invention in one of the laboratories in the Cambridge University or Oxford. Well, of course, I can verify it through what is called a Google search, but in any case, it is not ever invented in India. And, it so goes. For example, take a petrological microscope. Well, a petrological microscope is little different from a biological microscope. Not even today, we have not been able to create a decent world-class microscope in India. There is no brand. Of course, there are hundreds of colleges and laboratories in the country where Indian microscopes are purchased and used. Well, all that one has to do is just compare one of those microscopes with the Olympus. It's a cheap microscope, a Japanese brand, Olympus microscope. In other words, the quality of a Olympus microscope and of an Indian microscope made in India, in Hyderabad or any place, they are identical in appearance. Quality is way different. So that is the problem with the Indian science. In other words, it is not actually simply inventing or innovating new things, new ideas, new procedures, new processes. Science is also driven by scientific research in a country is also driven by, I think, by the innovation of new equipments for analytical work. Take, for example, Sir C.V. Raman's, contribution to science. Raman spectroscopy is now very commonly taught, and Raman spectroscopy instruments are used all over the world. But at least I know one thing. In Karivattam campus, there are at least 2 installations of Raman spectrophotometers or whatever. But who built it? It was built in France. A French company is probably the sole dealer and builder of this particular equipment. Well, of course, it is something that is based on a concept originated by the Sir C.V. Raman and then modified and improved by the rest of the, hardworking laboratory scientists or scientists who are in the field of optics and electron optics, whatever, and they have developed further refinements, and finally this French company had built a machine. And in fact, what had happened is there is a department of optoelectronics in the Karivattam campus. I would not say it is a new branch, but of course, anything is new when it is created in any of the university campuses in India. So this department has actually a bust of in their lounge, or Sir C.V. Raman proudly, proudly presenting a memorial to the person who had led to the current developments in the area of optoelectronics. Well, Dr. Sir C.V. Raman was once upon a time in the 1951 or 52 in Thiruvananthapuram or in Trivandrum, when the meeting of the Indian Academy of Sciences was held in Trivandrum, because Raman had his own student, Dr. C.S. Venkateswaran, a PhD student of Raman, who was working as a principal of the University College. And naturally, several of the Indian Academy fellows descended to Trivandrum for these scientific sessions, etc., and for their deliberations. And there was a evening public meeting held in the what is called today's Ayangali Hall or yesterday's Victoria Jubilee Town Hall, in which Sir C.V. Raman, C.S. Venkateswaran, and Homi Baba addressed a small group of, I would not say cream of the Trivandrum audience, some people who understood English and with the inclination toward science. And naturally, there will be definitely a lot of teachers in physics and so on and so forth. And the vast majority probably in the audience was probably from the University College. And there is an interesting thing about the geology research wing of the University of Travancore those days. This division is called Mineral Survey and Research. This was originally actually intended to explore the mineral wealth of Kerala and do research and exploration as well as development of the mineral resources. The whole concept was conceived by C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer, who was the Diwan of Travancore when the Travancore University was founded. This Mineral Survey Division was originally founded by one T.R.M. Lorry, a British citizen with a BSc degree in geology. And as a great advantage, the Mineral Survey and Research had, Lorry being the chief, had an excellent collection of books in the library, plus what is called the Kranz collection of minerals, and then a museum equipped with geologic maps, equipped with the fossil samples, equipped with rock samples, and so on and so forth. And above all, the Mineral Survey and Research Division contributed or subscribed to at least 3 or 4 journals those days published from abroad. In other words, that is actually, what is a research journal and a paper in a research journal? It is actually a telescope, I would say, to the horizon of research. So this was functioning. Mr. Lorry served only for 2 years. I think from 1941 to 43 or something. So, however, there was, by 1947, Professor K.K. Menon, who earned a BSc degree in geology from the Presidency College in Madras, joined this unit of the Mineral Survey and Research as a assistant geologist. And I think there was a C.V. Paulus sir who also joined as after a BSc degree as an assistant geologist. And later on, Professor K.K. Menon, then he was, sponsored by the Travancore University by paying all the tuition as well as the travel expenditure to go to the United States and do a master's or a PhD degree, whatever, so that he can come back and lead the geologic research in the state. And by all said and done, by 1947, Professor K.K. Menon came back with a master's degree from the Yale University. And his master's thesis was supervised by one of the star economic geologists, Professor Alan Bateman, who is otherwise known to the geological community, professional community, as well as academics, say a well sold and well written textbook on what is called mineral deposits, how they form and why they form and what are the other categories or categorization of the mineral deposits into metallic minerals and non-metallic minerals, so on and so forth. And when K.K. Menon sir came back from United States, he had brought his own collection of journals as well as a large number of books which are still in the Department of Geology Library of the University of Kerala. If the book is in one piece, then the first page, the front cover, inside cover will have a signature of an autograph by K.K. Menon and along with the date, etc. So what I'm saying is, even in that department, all the equipments, all the microscopes and others, everything was imported. In other words, India has been lagging behind in the field of science and technology right from the very early days. For example, I will make a quote here. In 1731 or 32, under the Tsarist Russia, the Academy of Sciences, the Russian Academy of Sciences was founded. Then, interestingly, in that note somewhere it says, it is actually following the model of the Academy of Sciences of the of Europe, which was founded 3 or 4 years earlier. So, in 1773, what was India doing? And God alone knows, because we have not had any kind of documentation. No documentation at all about it. Only documentation is the political and administrative side, and what the British were doing or not doing. Exactly not doing. That is not the thing. Exactly what they were doing, because only in the 18th and the 19th centuries, we had accepted the Britain as our rulers and the British model as our a new elevator to a new India, etc., etc. So what I'm saying is, what we need is some kind of a rethink on how to model our education. And this new education policy proposed by the government of India after 20 years or so is a wonderful piece of approach, document, and very interestingly, on such a very important document, there are only very little deliberations going on. In other words, even when the draft was circulated among all the MPs and state governments, very few cared to make any comment on this. And in fact, this new document on higher education or education per se is actually modeled after what is done in China or what is done in the United States, or a mixture of both. Because in order to excel in this world of today, we have to have a new vehicle of innovative science and technology. Everybody knows, but unfortunately no one talks about it. People who are actually placed in the correct places to perform innovative work, unfortunately, choose to enjoy the job, that's all. And enjoy what is called, they almost all think that this is something I was given by the government or the agency that recruited me because I am of my qualifications. That's all. Qualification is the step one in the area of innovation. There are hundreds of steps ahead, and very rarely people go beyond the step 1 or 10, leaving, and by the time they reach step 10, they are retired. Actually what I mean to say by retirement is superannuated. Otherwise, they are retired right from the day 1 onwards, enjoying life with the extra cash in hand, which is not available and secured what is called social security, etc., and which is not available to the rest of the people when you look around and you enjoy from the day one on, without any innovation, except that you always practice what others did. Others did in the West. Now, unfortunately, India is also a country, I would say, where a PhD is actually ghost authored by professionals, especially in the area of languages, social sciences, and humanities, because that is what happens. When it comes to science and lab science, it is kind of difficult. In other words, if there are 10 people doing a ghost writing for a PhD thesis available in a town, there will not be probably even a single person readily agreeing to do a ghost writing of a PhD thesis. And a wonderful decision the policy makers in the field of higher education has done is, they have decided maybe 2 or 3 decades ago that there is no need for evaluation of the PhD thesis by an examiner in the English-speaking world. That was actually a big deterrent in respect of the content of the monograph, as well as the style of the monograph, as well as the language used in the monograph. Well, it is an appalling state. I don't know who will be able to correct it. If we don't correct it, by next generation, after 20 or 30 years from now, our status in the countries among the world will be very poor in the areas of in the domain of science and technology. And I was making a straightforward from the bottom of heart to the camera, a introspection about what is happening to science and technology in India. Thank you. I will see you in another episode on another topic. Thank you. Bye.